Okay, well, as Antiza and I were just saying, my skills lie in certain areas and not others. And I wasn't able to get this call set up in the way that I had intended, but I'm super excited to now be here and start this open house day where throughout the day I'm going to be speaking with different clients of mine, because I think if you haven't coached with me, you might have no idea what that's like. And some people like to know, be curious anyway. Okay, here's Antiza coming in. And I think I just invited you. Now you have to invite me. Oh, approve. Okay. This is super exciting. I love that. I'm okay. Success.
Woo! We did it.
Well, Antiza, is there a delay? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Let me just turn it.
Excellent. I'm super happy to do it this way on Facebook Live. That way, if anyone joins us and has questions or comments. Hey, Selena! Yay! I'm so happy you're here. Can you see the comments too, Antiza?
No.
Okay, here's Antiza coming in.
Uh-oh.
I think I just invited. Wait, is that in your computer? You're here. Can you see the comments too, Antiza?
I don't know.
Okay. Let's be calm. This is what can happen in coaching. The other person has a whole thing going on, and I can't control it, but I can know when to intervene and when to be patient. So for those of you who are on and don't know me, I'm Alexandra Stockwell. I'm a physician turned relationship and intimacy expert. And when I practiced medicine, people always thought that they knew exactly what it would be like to go to the doctor, although seeing me in my small holistic practice usually was a lot different than people imagined. It was a lot better. And when it comes to relationship and intimacy coaching, oops, okay, we're starting again. Anyhow, I'm doing an open house today. I'm super happy you're here, Antiza, to work out the tech kinks, and we'll see if we discuss any other kinks. And yeah, I really just think there's a lot of mystery around what it's like to have relationship and intimacy coaching. And I thought, why not have an open house party and talk to the experts, namely people who have been my clients. So if you're here, if you have any questions, comments, if you know Antiza, let us know. Selena, now I do. That's so great. I love that. Yeah, Selena, do you consider yourself a relationship and intimacy coach these days? How do you describe what you do? I love that you're here for this call, and welcome to everyone. And Antiza, you are the guest of the moment in this open house. I hear it very choppy, and like there's a delay. Is the sound clear on your end?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will learn to ignore the delay and focus on what's really important here, which is I am so grateful that you're here to share your experience as my client. Selena says, yes, relationship and communication. Ooh, that's good. That's really good. Let's see. Okay, let me collect myself. So we coached together a few years ago, and we've actually done a number of different packages. We started with what I'm really going to call relationship coaching and transferred into coaching mentorship, because you have a beautiful coaching business and your own clients, which you're welcome to say something about. But let's go to where we first started coaching. Actually, this is the first time I've done this. I need to do more context. I just want to say how much I love you, and that you're in Denmark right now, and I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. And one of the beautiful things about coaching online is that we can connect from anywhere in the world. I've coached people in Japan. I've coached people in my town using Zoom. So that's one of the first things to be really clear, that we can have, oh, Selena says, I hear you choppy. Okay, Selena, do you hear it when I'm speaking, or is it kind of echo, which is how I hear it? I'm not sure. It's like definitely in my phone. Well,
it could make sense for me to put my headset on. I wonder if that might make a difference.
Okay, let's just try it, because this is going to be such an interesting conversation. Ah, that's so much better. Thank you.
Hey.
You just made my experience much easier, and I was willing to just handle the extra sensations, but if Selena hears it too, this is going to make for a much more pleasant conversation for everybody else who's listening.
I'm so glad to be the salve on this particular situation.
Thank you. Okay, so let's just have you start by introducing yourself right now. There you are, radiant woman in Denmark. What do you want to say about who you are, separate from being my client, just who you are in the world?
Who I am in the world? Well, I am an American expat in Denmark. That's quite practical and tangible. I'm originally from Seattle, but I've lived here for almost a decade. And I'm a coach. I facilitate transformation, bringing people home to themselves, helping them become more present in the world. I put that all under the guise of emotional intelligence, because for me, knowing the language of your emotions, knowing how to discern between your thoughts, your reactivity, and your true uplifting emotional experience is a necessary part of the transcendence and transformation process, which I gained deeper access to in my work with you, incidentally.
Yeah, let's go right in there. Like the fact that you teach people to be aware of the truth of how they feel, and the way you said that was so beautiful. Do you have that exact phrase handy still? What you just said? Spontaneous.
No, but spontaneous. Okay. It isn't.
All right.
It's in my head enough that I could probably say it again.
Well, I love your languaging. I'm going to just tell you how it landed for me, that you teach people how to know themselves, how to know their feelings, and how to really come home to inhabit their body, their soul, and their life. Totally my words, but that's what I got from what you just said.
I liked your interpretation too.
Okay. And I just think that is the most powerful introduction to talking about our work together. You and I know that that's true. Anyone listening would have no reason to know that's true. But like, you and I have so much rapport, and I have permission to talk about you and your path. I want to be super clear, as someone who's a physician turned relationship and intimacy expert, I'm trained by HIPAA standards, meaning I am so discreet. If I'm coaching someone and we meet at a party, obviously it's COVID, we're not meeting at a party, but if we were to meet at a party or sit down next to one another on the bus, I won't be cold. I won't ignore you, but I won't pick up where we left off in our last coaching session, because when we're out and about in the world, you get to choose. If you greet me and engage with me as though I'm your coach, then I will meet you there, but I'm super discreet. So I want to be, and like hold confidentiality really high. And so I just want to be really clear, you and I are having this conversation because you absolutely give permission to share. So that being said, the reason that it's such an amazing starting point for this conversation, to hear that you help people feel their feelings and know their inner truth, is because when I think of our first coaching sessions, I
was challenged by that.
Oh my gosh, that is putting it mildly. It's not just that you were challenged by it, because you know what? I coach people who are challenged to know what they want, are challenged to know how they feel. You weren't challenged. You were righteous and in denial. but you
Yeah.
said it. What was your experience?
I think I mean, if I tune back into that time of my life, I didn't have any kind of permission to have any sensitivity, and as a result, it came out in really sideways, pushy, wonky, ungraceful ways. You also met me at a time where I was very triggered, but you know, I experienced identify those as being mine. I had associated them with environment or with people or circumstances. And so I just didn't know that aspect of myself to that same degree. I knew that I was a very sensitive person and that I had a really developed inner world, but I also didn't know how to bridge that into intimacy, into connection with other people, how to own it as mine. And I didn't know, and one of the things that was so profound in our early work together is I didn't know that certain aspects of my behavior were reactions, like they were evidence of me being triggered and defensive. I had never, I didn't understand that. And so when, you know, one of the early, most profound learnings that I had from you was that righteousness and justification were forms of defense. And it was with you that I actually learned how in real time to say that I felt vulnerable and actually feel vulnerable. Like ironically, I think 6 months before you and I started coaching together, I did one of those 100 days of vulnerability things, which I never completed, incidentally. And I look back on that because Facebook reminds you of these moments in your life. And not a single one of them was vulnerable. And I realized that it took me until I was 33 years old to understand it at a body level what vulnerability felt like, because I was so protected and so self-defended that I never allowed myself to get to vulnerable. And that was one of the earlier conversations you and I also had was, you know, I get like a sniffle of threat, of danger, of betrayal, and I just like close the doors, things are boarded up, and I'm gone. My fortress is very advanced, and it had been my entire life. And so because of that reactive aspect of myself, I couldn't meet the parts of myself which were the most nourishing. And it was in my work with you that I learned that those aspects of myself, one, existed, two, deeply nourished me so that I could put my guard down elsewhere in my life and start to experience this more graceful, sensual, in the literal sense of it, like embodied in my senses, woman that I just, you know, in many ways I was like a teenager when we met, and now I'm like a grown adult.
I love hearing you talk, and I think you convey like the process of reconnecting with yourself so,
Yeah.
so beautifully. And it'd be fun to ask you more questions. And I also feel like just hearing you speak, we have access to that, what that is like. And will you say something about having accepted, befriended, and learned to really honor and cherish these aspects of yourself that you'd been close to? How has that made a difference in how you connect with other people, lovers, friends, colleagues, anyone? Because when we're intimate with ourselves in the way that you just expressed so beautifully, that influences interactions with everyone, even with nature.
Right. Yeah. So I guess the thread into what I want to share is paralleled by something that you write in your book that was really profound for me, and you've talked about it a couple of times. I've seen in your Facebook posts as well, is because your parents divorced at a specific point in your life, you just sort of expected that you and Rod would get divorced. And my childhood circumstances involved divorce, but they also involved manipulation and betrayal and abuse and neglect and mind games and all sorts of other sort of dysfunctionalities, if you will. And so I was unaware of this for a very long time, but I would go into relationships expecting to be betrayed. I would go into all forms of relationships with men. Like I wasn't in intimate relation or physically intimate relationships with women, but like any relationship that got intimate emotionally or spiritually, I would just expect that I was going to get dropped on my face and totally screwed over. And it would usually come after I had fully overextended myself, gone above and beyond the call of duty for friendship or relationship. And so I would leave those experiences both justified and incredibly resentful. And kind of like I had this internal, like I knew this was going to happen. And almost always I had a sense of it, but then I would ignore the red flags of those relationships too. You know, I had that other side of the equation where I created betraying environments because I was constantly ignoring my intuition and my connections with other people as well. And I was avoiding conflict and I wasn't asking the hard questions. And I just I didn't have access to the intimate communication skills also that were required to vet whether or not I wanted a person in my life. And over the course of our time working together, I was in, I can't even remember. I wasn't really in that many relationships, like physically intimate relationships, because my singular focus was really on myself at the time. But um, then towards the end, I was in one, and even though it didn't, you know, we're not still together. It was one of the most profoundly intimate relationships in the sense of the amount of truth that could be exchanged between the two of us, the level of trust that existed between the two of us, um, and the level of love that was there. It was like it was the first time that I started to inch into allowing someone else to love me and knowing that I was held. And incidentally, like we're still friends and he is like we're not close in the same way that we were then, but if I had a struggle and I needed someone to talk to, he would pick up the phone the moment that I called. Like, and that level of intimacy and that level of love is still very intact. And I used to have this idea that like if you weren't in a relationship with someone, the love was gone, the love got taken away, you were robbed of the experience of love, and you could never get that back again. And so it was just like relationships ending were tragedy. And I learned in our work together, and even since then, as I've just evolved in those teachings as they've experienced themselves inside of my own body on the cellular level, is that love doesn't disappear. Love isn't something you get from someone else. And so you bring in this whole other dimension into your relationships with other people, whether they're sexual intimacy or not, that is kind of like a level of concrete that you like, you know, like you want it there. And they just get richer and richer and richer and richer and richer over time. And it grows really organically. And with that, you don't need the agenda. You don't need the relationship forms in the way that we've been sort of conditioned to believe that they should exist. There's much more of a free format exchange between two individuals and a compassion for one another that gives me permission to not need to be perfect. And that was a kind of a big crutch for me, is like I needed to show up as the perfect girlfriend or the perfect friend or the perfect host, or and there was a lot of pressure that I put on myself. And now it's just very self-evident, you know, like I sit down with a person and the connection is just obvious and we can both be like, I would love to be friends with you, you know, and it's just like there's no hemming and humming about it, you know, or someone who's a potential suitor, it's just like, wow, I find you extraordinary. And you can just say it. Like there's no, you don't have to hold back because it's so genuine that it just slips right in, and it's not, there's nothing offensive about being honest, and there's permission for it. And I didn't even know, you know, years ago, not even that many years ago, that it was possible to have a healthy way of relating where I didn't think to myself, oh, woe is me, I'm single. I don't consider myself that way anymore because my life is full of so much intimacy that to even claim the single word just feels off because I have intimacy everywhere I go. And I didn't even know that that was possible. I just, I have intimacy with my mother, like, but when you and I met, she and I were hardly speaking, and so the fact that I can have intimacy with a woman who lives in a completely different world, who, we had a very troubling relationship growing up, and now I feel like she's my mom, and I've, as a result, also owned aspects of myself that I didn't know that I had, that have become huge sources of empowerment for me, because I feel like I'm a very multidimensional, diverse, mutable, sensual being now, and all I wanted when I first met you was to feel well used and to feel fully utilized and to be of service. And now I feel my journey is far from complete, but I feel like all parts of me are accessible, and all parts of me are usable now. And it makes my life feel much more satisfying.
And Tiza, that's so beautiful to hear. And anyone who's watching, if you have any questions, comments, a reflection for Antiza, go ahead and post it. I have to say, one of the things that touched me most deeply in what you've just said is that there's permission to be honest. And that was something you just like said in a matter of fact way, but it's true. We live in a world where we need to give ourselves permission to be honest. That doesn't mean to be abrasive, bullying, dominating, narcissistic, or controlling. And it certainly doesn't mean withholding, compromising, pushing things under the rug. But in the middle between them is the beauty of honesty in connection. And so you are permission to be honest. And I love how you said that. And I wonder, I don't know if you have an answer. We haven't really prepped this call,
Yeah.
other than putting it in our calendars. But like what you're describing is actually so extraordinary, to go from what I'm going to very just concisely describe as disconnected from so many parts of yourself to integrated, with permission to be honest and access to your full sensual, intimate, embodied experience with yourself. And what I think is so extraordinary is in relation to other people, because sometimes people can really feel integrated and connected themselves and then lose it in connection with others. And you obviously don't. It's actually sort of synergistic. So that's like a quantum leap, clearly. And I'm wondering, is there anything in particular about how I coach, or something that you asked, or something that I asked you, like is there any like moment that was a pivot to give somebody a sense of the journey from where you were, as you've described it, to where you are now? Because I know that if I were listening, I want to know, okay, like from one end of the rainbow to the other, what were the colors in the middle? And okay, we have some questions. So Narel says, lovely conversation, have enjoyed the honesty. Thank you. It's 2:30 a.m. here. She's joining us from Australia. I
Wow.
just love that. So let's see, Australia,
Denmark.
Denmark, California. Like we're
We're
wrapping
spanning
the
the globe.
globe with honesty.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for adding that. And Selena, I assume you're in Germany now. You both create such big, warm, welcoming, loving space. That's something that I feel with very few other people, and you got that in common. That's not a coincidence. Oh, Selena, thank you. I love that you say that. And do you have a response to that? It's not a question, but do you have a response to that reflection, Antiza? And yes, Selena's in Germany now.
Hi, Selena. I know Selena too. Um, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that my work with you helped unleash that part of me. I think it was very much a part of that initial sort of repulsion attraction that I had to you, is like you did embody this aspect of myself that I didn't know that, like, I had judgment about it, like severe and it felt unsafe for me at the time to be that way. And so you were really like a perfect person for me to work with. And, when you're in I feel like it's important to say this too, in terms of, this video is for people who might be interested in working with you, is like the relationship with a coach and a client is deeply intimate. And you and I had and still have such a profound bond. Like, you taught me how to reparent myself, and you were a model for what that looked like in your own life. And you were living the results that I ultimately was looking for in my life. And it's like attracts like in that way. And I think I also see that as being really true with the clients that are attracted to me. Is it's not that they want my life, but they want that same semblance of embodiment and liberation that I have also created for myself, for themselves, in the context of their lives. And when you're looking for a coach, you want to know that they're going to be able to help you get there. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that we learn through association. You've said this too. Like, one of the ways that we learn is by role modeling, by seeing other people
that
do it
mammals
well.
learn through imitation. And
Yeah.
no matter how intellectually perspicacious we are, meaning no matter what degree of smarty pants we have, we're still mammals. And one of our most primary ways of learning is through imitation.
And I would say it's not like who I am now is 100% purely authentic to me. It's not like I'm mimicking you.
Right.
But my ability to recognize that you had something that I wanted meant that it existed in me in the first place. And so you helped me bring it up to the surface. You helped me reveal it to myself so that I could claim it as my own. Because the origin of it, of course, lives in both of us. And it was just undeveloped in me. And that's the thing that's really important too, is like, I'm not like inauthentically creating a specific type of person with my clients either. They're discovering parts of themselves by allowing me to mirror them in places that they previously didn't have reflection. And that is what you did for me, which I'm profoundly grateful for, because I know thousands of coaches, and I can't imagine having gone through that work with anyone else. And now I have other teachers and gurus in my life, and I would not be able to reap the dividends of what they have to offer me had I not gone through the years of work that you and I went through together. And there's always going to be a person for each stage of your life, and you were my person. And in many ways, you still are my person. Like just because we had such a close bond, and you were really like a huge instrumental part of my life for 4 years. So,
well, building on that, and I receive that. Of course, I receive that. And building on that, do you have like something specific? And you may not, because you've.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I forgot that you asked that question. Sorry.
Yeah, because
meander
I just until I worked with a relationship coach, like, I am the authority on my own relationship. My husband and I, well, now we've been married for 24 years, but when we first worked with a relationship coach, we had years of history, years of nuanced understanding. And I was like, how is someone else going to be able to meet us and already in the first session have something useful? Because if it's not useful, I don't want to do it. And it was really, really useful. But I think it's this tricky thing to imagine, like, if you haven't been with me through my relationship experiences, how do you have something to offer me that's helpful? And so I'm asking the question in a different way from how I did before, but that's part of what's driving me in asking, if you remember any particular point where you were like, it was like this, and then in the coaching session, this happened, or an assignment I gave you, and then it was like that.
There were, because of the longevity of our work together, there were numerous experiences. So I'll see if I can name a couple that really stood out for me. there was this one session we had after we'd been working together, I think for a year and a half. And for my first year, just to give context to anyone listening to this, I was kind of a wreck. Like, I had gone through a whole spiritual awakening. Alexandra was my doula for that. And then I kind of had to rebuild my life and learn how to relate with people in a completely different way. And you were with me every step of the way for that. And
yeah, and I'll just say that it's atypical that people work with me for years. That has to do with the nature of your growth. And we really did what I'm going to call relationship coaching, and then mentorship and life coaching.
yeah,
We went on to all those things, which I'm available to do and have coached many people. But in general, I work with people for a finite amount of time in order to accomplish a clear result. So,
right.
yes.
And we had finite amounts of time with clear results, but we just packed several on top of one another because
Yeah, they were sequential.
as it happens,
you didn't sign up for years with me. You signed up
no.
for some number of months, and then you did it again, and you did it again.
And then, and what I experienced with you is like, you have this idea of what you want. And then as you actually start to transform, the idea of what you want starts to, get multiple dimensions. It starts to look a little bit differently, and I certainly experienced that with you. But after about a year and a half of us working together, I think we were in our third package at that point. I was in Morocco.
I actually do want to say very clearly that for people that I do life coaching or coaching mentorship, then it's multiple packages. But anyone that I do like straight up couples coaching or working with an individual on relationship issues, we don't end up stacking them because you have what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it begs to be said that I was really going through like a massive life overhaul, and there was context for us to continue.
Yeah.
That had I been in a more stable non-transitional period of my life, like I also left my career, I was starting a business, I was relationship and all sorts of
not sure which continent you're going to live in, but anyway, go ahead.
So I think one of the things that really struck me a lot, which I've taken into my own coaching as well, and also into every single one of my intimate relationships, was when I was in Morocco. The first time I was in Morocco twice while we were working together, once with clients and once attending a sort of a luxury travel conference thing. And I was feeling really tender. And at this point in time, I didn't just like announce at the beginning of a call that I was feeling tender. And I had gotten into the habit of having you intuit that. And on this particular call, we had a plan to like go through my business. And I was feeling like ouchy tender. And you started based on the survey that I sent in. And then suddenly, very quickly, you were like, what's happening? Like you really stopped, tuned into me, and noticed that I was not energetically in the place that my survey said that I was in. I had completely shifted into a completely different energy, and you dialed into that with me, and you were just there with it. It's not like I needed you to resolve anything. It was like that part of me needed to be seen before we could take off on this other adventure somewhere else. And it was really a formidable experience for me because I think up until that point, it was like you pick a channel and you just go, and your own humility and your own vulnerability shows very clearly in the way that you show up as a coach. I've also seen that in the way that you show up as a mother and as a partner to Rod, is that you're willing to course correct, and you do it really gracefully. Like, oh, this isn't the vibe we're on. We're going to shift it. And it's something very, very subtle, but hugely profound and very emotionally intelligent, is like, I can sense that you're not with me. Let me get with you so that we can go somewhere together. And I can see that singular skill alone is probably hugely responsible for the success of your relationship with Rod and the emotional intelligence of your 4 children. And I have applied that skill to my clients, to the people that I connect with. Like, they walk into my home and maybe I'm in a joyful, bubbly mood, and I can feel that they're not there, and I can adjust and be with them. And I still mess this up because we're all human. But previous to that, I was on my track and I was going, and I didn't really care where anybody else was at. And as a result, came off as like pushy and righteous and absolute, you know, like and aloof also, like just not aware. And it was never something that you explicitly taught me. It was just something that you modeled that I took on because I was so profoundly impacted in that moment. And I was just like, I want other people to have this experience. And so that was one huge one, I would say. And even though you're a very brilliant woman in your own right, and you have a successful business in your own right, and you you know, you're forgive me for saying so, but like a know-it-all Jewish mom also, like when you listen to like you and Josephine talk, like it's just clear, like you're the Jewish mom who's got all the good advice. In our coaching relationship, you defaulted to my intuition. And I had never had that experience before. And I didn't know that I could be guided by something inside of me. I lived off of asking other people what they thought about my life choices. I needed championship from other people in order to take action on anything that was really big and really vulnerable. It didn't occur to me that I could give myself space and time to listen to my own instinct, my own intuition, and trust and build that relationship. And in terms of building intimacy in a relationship, that's probably one of the most profound impacts that you've had on me, is like, I don't ever defer from that anymore. Like that is number one. And in that sense, my relationship is with source, actually, as it moves through me. But it didn't occur to me that I could live in that way. Like I never saw anybody else make those kinds of decisions. And those who did felt a little like elusive, mysterious creatures to me. Like, how do you know what to do? And as it turns out, like we all actually have that wisdom inside of us. And many coaches, I think, you know, I think I learned this from you in the dojo. This is another dimension of our work together, was when you and Ken were doing the coaching dojo, is that anytime I might be giving advice to someone else, then the coaching container is about me and not about the client. And the conversation should always be about how is the client developing and what skills are they getting so that they can create for themselves what you have.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Actually, for me, you're hitting on something which I don't talk about very often, but it's totally important to me. And I think it comes, you know, I'm 52 now. I don't know that I would have felt this way when I was 25, when I wasn't actually coaching. So I wouldn't have been feeling this way either way. But I've seen so many people who go to therapy and have a positive benefit, and then it levels off. Or
Yeah.
they go to a retreat and have this like expansive, mind-blowing epiphany, and then 2 years later they've leveled off. Maybe the baseline is a little bit higher, but they've leveled off. And the thing that I don't entirely know why, because I haven't put attention on it, but I am devoted to coaching and facilitating lifelong lasting results. I do not want any of my programs, offers, or coaching experiences to be the kind of thing that are crisis intervention, and when the crisis is past, the benefit is that you're back where you were before. In the Aligned and Hot Marriage program, which we haven't talked about in our conversation now, but it's the thing that I really have a lot of attention on, because there's a bonus of a free coaching session for anybody who signs up for that before tomorrow night at midnight Pacific time, that like I want to be teaching skills that last a lifetime. Even as a couple's relationship evolves and grows, these are skills that will truly take you to the end of your life with passion, juiciness, and ever deepening connection. And likewise, if someone is my client, there are times when I will just say what I know to be true, because that is the right thing. But in general, I want people to complete a coaching relationship without needing to come back and ask me a question or wishing that they could, but knowing that, yes, you have all the resources and you'll have future teachers. In your case, maybe you'll do another coaching package with me, but whatever we cover, that doesn't need to be covered again in your life.
Right.
And I really like how you describe that, because for you that meant really honoring your intuition. And I don't know if this is true or not, but there probably were times in our coaching sessions where I saw something different. And if I were guiding it, I would have gone in another direction. And maybe there would have been benefit in the short term for getting it right. But it was so much more important that you go with your own intuition and make adjustments. And there isn't really right or wrong in these things. I'm just sharing my experience about it. That, or there were things that you felt, and I was like, okay, well, try that. Like, try
Yeah.
that and see what happens. Even if I personally would do it differently, if you feel good about it, try it and see what happens, because we're always learning and growing. And this is going to be very valuable, whichever way it turns out, because either you really knew what was right for you, and or you get to refine your intuition and realize, oh, I thought it was this, but it was that. Anyway, that's super beautiful.
And
We
that's
have,
exactly what happened.
yes. And it, like, I really do not want to give anybody fish. I want to teach any client of mine how to fish. And
Mhm.
sometimes that means giving a fish so they know what they're fishing for.
Fishing for.
But as soon as you have a fish and you know what it is, then you can throw the line in and you will know when you've caught a fish versus snagged on a stick in the pond or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Well, Antisa, let's let's there's no especially elegant way to just end a conversation that clearly could go on for a few hours, because these are things we care about so much. Oh, um, Narel says, thank you both. Love your juiciness. I've learned a great deal, closer to 3 a.m. now, and I'm closing my eyes, feeling grateful for your sharing. Well, I hope you have such sweet dreams, Narel. I'm so glad that you were here with us and that everyone gets to have an experience of you, Antisa, and your magnificence, and a feeling for how your magnificence became more expressed through coaching together. Is there anything that you want to say as we complete?
Yeah, I guess to pair it with the conversation of if you're in a couple working with you, just because I've seen your work there, and I can also see how your work with me would work so well with two people in the room, is one of the things that I think is quite unique to you and maybe Marla, who was your coach and mentor. There's this kind of strong line in our little lineage there, is that you have such embodied diplomacy in such a way that that when you work with couples, it's equally as deep for both people as it is for one. And I think that I can only imagine that if you've never had relationship coaching and you don't know you, Alexandra, that you might think, oh, well, maybe I'm going to divulge something about this relationship, and then all of a sudden I'm going to find out that I'm the one that's been doing it wrong all this time, and I don't really want to face that. Or what if they both gang up on me or whatever? And you're so fair that there's just no risk of that happening. And I know that because even as you and I had an individual relationship where, during times we were navigating contested relationships in my personal life, or challenging relationships with clients, you were always fair to both me and to the client. Like everything was an opportunity to learn and to grow and to use that material to develop more intimacy. And while there wasn't sort of this explicit intention of creating that in our container because we had sort of our minds on other things, it was absolutely my biggest takeaway is that there's a way in which you can use anything that's revealed to build intimacy, to build fire, to build connection, to build compassion. And it's all available to be used. And if you don't use it, then it's like undigested brilliance turns to shit, as Mama Gina says. Like it's the same concept in this work. It's like all material is available to create more intimacy. And when you remove the hooks from a relationship that come from dysfunctional relating and trauma bonding and all those other things, that's what you move toward, is sort of a sweeping gathering of any truth that happens to reveal itself as a means to create more of a bond in a relationship. And I know you do that with Rod. You talk about it a lot, but I experienced it as an individual in my work with you as well, all the way up until we finished working in the sort of more mentorship context. And I have an enormous amount of respect for you for that, because there was no point at which you were going to throw anyone under the bus. And so you're very trustworthy in that way. And I think that that's really important when you're making a large investment and doing something so vulnerable as putting your relationship under the microscope, to know that that's intact. And I think it's rare amongst coaches. I think that, there's other coaches that would be much more judgmental and maybe gossipy, and, you're just not that way. And so I have an appreciation for that. So I just thought it would be worth saying.
I love that you said that, because I'm so not the way that you describe me not being, that I forget. But yes, sometimes I think people think relationship coaching is like I'm the referee, and I am not the referee. I am all about both and looking for how what two people are saying that seems so different is actually the same thing from a different perspective. And that anyone who's in a close relationship, that's invariably the case. It's like instead of being the referee, it's more like the six blind men and the elephant, where they each describe the elephant differently. Yeah.
It's like you take that experience with Rod, sorry to just tail in this, but like with Rod, where he reminds you that you guys are on the same team.
Yes, exactly.
To help people see that they're actually on the same team.
Yes. So. Well, I'm aware that in 2 minutes, I'm going to start another conversation with a couple. So for me, I'm going to continue the conversation. For you, I'm so grateful for how you have given yourself and just been so warm and luscious and generous, really generous of your experience and who you are. And I hope you have a good night in Denmark as well. Let me just read you a few of the comments. So Selena says, thank you. And Nera sends that double heart emoji, which is so nice. That feels good for the two of us. And Kim Holden is here, says, thank you for sharing, both of you. So thank you, Antiza. And for everyone who's here, I'm going to start my next call in 2 minutes. So stay tuned. It'll be a fresh Facebook Live. And I love you.
I love you.
Thank you.
Bye.